Welcome to the Football for Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees. In this episode, we're going to be talking about one of the greatest female players to have ever laced up a pair of football boots. We're going to be talking about the Arsenal and Netherlands striker, Vivianne Miedema. Before we get into this episode, a humongous, great big thank you goes to those of you who have been able to support the podcast on Patreon. Next week on Patreon, there will be a Football for Kids monthly quiz and an episode on Luka Modric released. To find out how to support the podcast via Patreon and become a super listener, please click on the link in the description of this episode. Right then, let's get into some of your shout-outs and your messages, shall we? The first one says, "Hello Darren, my name is Alex. My brother Sam and I absolutely love your podcasts and we listen to them every night before going to bed. I'm 9 years old and Sam is 8. Sam's all-time favourite episode is the one about Robert Lewandowski, and my favourite is the one about Pickles the dog who found the World Cup trophy. We are big football fans and would love it if you could give a shout out to our soccer team, Kill Celtic in County Kildare in Ireland. And we'd really like it if you could do an episode on Zinedine Zidane." Well, thank you so much, boys, for being listeners, and thank you for your message. A massive shout out to you, all of your football teammates, and your wonderful coaches. I hope that you're all doing really well with your football, and most importantly, you're enjoying it. Thank you so much for being listeners. And the next one says, "Hi Darren, my name is Finley and I am 8 years old and I live in Horsham in Sussex and I love your podcast. I play for Broadbridge Bears under 9s. Please can you give a shout out to my teammates, Henry, Joe, Ryan, Max, Noah, Stanley and my coaches who are Adam and Hannah. I support Tottenham and I would love an episode on Lloris and Kane. Love from Finley." Well, a big shout out to you, Finley, and to everybody at your football team and your wonderful coaches. Thank you so much for your message, and thank you very much for being a listener of the podcast. Harry Kane is an episode which we did a little while ago, and don't worry, Lloris is on my list of episodes I need to write. And the next one is a massive, humongous, great big shout out to Logan Conliffe and the Ridgeway Eagles under 7s who are undefeated in their first season. Logan would love for me to do an episode on Fred from Manchester United. Well, a big shout out to you, Logan, everybody at your football team. Thank you so much for your message and for being a listener. And the last one in this episode is a big shout out to Murray, who loves the podcast and would love for me to do an episode on the legend that is Pele. Well, Murray, you are in luck because there are already 2 episodes on Pele. There's a part 1 and a part 2. So if you haven't listened to those yet, please do go and give them a listen. Thank you very much for being a listener, and I hope that you enjoy this episode as well. If you want to send a shout out in to your football team, put a request in, or whatever it is, you can do so by asking an adult to send an email to footballforkidspodcast@gmail.com. Right then, it's time to talk about the phenomenal Vivianne Miedema. Viv grew up in a place called Hogeveen in Holland, a small and quiet town that suited her perfectly. Viv grew up in a small family where it was just her parents, her grandparents and her brother, who she's still very close to. Where Viv lived when she was younger, there was a small football pitch nearby. This is where she would practice her football, and she really enjoyed playing with the local kids and her brother. Viv played in the boys' team when she was younger, and she was the only girl on the team. Often, the boys in the other team and their spectators would make jokes about a girl playing and being the only one on the football pitch. This happened far too often. The first time it happened, though, she shut them all up. She shut them up by scoring 2 hat-tricks. Viv spent many years learning her craft and developing her skills in grassroots football and stood out as one of the best players on the pitch. So much so that she was signed to play for a team when she was 14 years old in the women's top division in Holland called SC Heerenveen. At 15 years old, Miedema made her debut for the club, becoming the youngest player ever to play in the league. And in the following season, she was the second highest goal scorer of the season. And then following on from that, she won the top goal scorer award, all while she was just 17 years old. So after 3 seasons, 74 games and 83 brilliant goals, 39 clubs across the world inquired about getting her to their club. The club which she ended up at, though, was the German powerhouse, Bayern Munich. Miedema was nervous and felt anxious about the move to Germany, as she couldn't speak any German or English, but she went anyway and she gave it her best shot. In Viv's first season with Bayern Munich, the side won the league and went an entire season completely unbeaten. This was the first time a German side had done this since 1976, a very long time ago. Viv spent 3 years with Bayern Munich, and in her third and final season, she was the Champions League top goal scorer. Several clubs were after Viv, and Bayern Munich were also desperate for her to stay there. But after many negotiations, Viv was off to a club she would spend many years with, and is still with now. She was off to North London, and she was off to Arsenal. It didn't take her long to make a name for herself, as on average, she scored in every other game which she played in. And in the first match of her second season with the club, she opened the season up by scoring a hat-trick against Liverpool. And from then on, she just carried on scoring cracker after cracker. In the 2019 season, Arsenal beat Bristol City with the largest scoreline in the history of the Women's Super League. The game ended 11-1 to Arsenal. Viv scored 6 goals and assisted with 4 others. The only one she wasn't involved in was the 11th, and that's because she wasn't even on the pitch. Pretty impressive, eh? So in 5 seasons with the club, Viv has broken countless Women's Super League records, including she was the first player to record 100 goals in the WSL. She's also had more hat-tricks than any other player in the league. She scored one of the fastest hat-tricks in the league, which took her 21 minutes. She's had the most assists in a single match. She's won the most Player of the Month awards. She's got the most combined goals between 2 players with her and Beth Mead. The most goals in 1 month, the most goals for a single club, the most goals in a single game, and so much more. Viv Miedema has done all of this, and she's currently just 26 years old. The story doesn't end here though, because not only has she been a phenomenal club player, but an extraordinary player for her country as well. Viv started playing for her country in 2013, and since then, she's played over 115 games, winning the Women's Euros in 2017, making it to the final of the 2019 World Cup. And she is the country's top goal scorer, smashing all records for both the men's and the women's team. So, from being laughed at and playing in the boys' team, to being anxious and playing in a country where she couldn't speak the language, Miedema has proven that it's important to take opportunities, because opportunities lead to opportunities, and who knows where they may take you. I hope that you've been inspired by the story of Viv and her wonderful career so far. And remember, if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about Football for Kids. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly or pitchside, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time.